So, welcome back. This is the second and final part of my presentation. Uh, it's the introduction to shipping carbonomics. I now move to the part of presentation that is related to speed optimization. If you remember from my previous presentation, I show you this exact same slide, and I said that speed has. Let me.
University under the supervision of Professor Berg and Professor
Let me. Some.
In this
okay.
we are going to
you have no
analyze
image actually. So
the motorways of the sea policy in Spain and taking a few steps.
This part of my last presentation is related to speed optimization. You remember this slide from my previous presentation? Speed has always been important for economic reasons, as it is a key determinant of fuel cost, which is a significant component of the operating cost of speed. Moreover, speed is an important parameter of the overall logistical operation of a shipping company and of the overall supply chain, and may directly or indirectly impact fleet size, ship size, cargo inventory cost, and shippers' balance.
After that, we will contemplate some specific
in addition, as emissions are directly
that,
proportional to fuel consumed, speed is also very much connected with the environmental dimension of shipping. And when shipping markets are in a depressed state, and slow steaming is the practice that the prevailing practice for economic mainly reasons, an important side effect of it is reduced emissions. Again, slow steaming is sailing in lower speeds than the design vessels, and super slow steaming is sailing at extremely low speeds, like in the case of Maersk Line, which had 110 vessels of its container fleet sailing in speeds half of the design speeds, which was actually running the vessel at 10% load of the main engine power.
With this
again, as I said previously, since 2011, we witnessed this slow steaming phenomenon for Maersk's tanker fleet, and slow steaming at that case was sailing at approximately 8.5 knots on ballast length instead of the normal speed of 13 knots.
Which could help the development of this.
In most operational research models found in the maritime transportation literature, it is assumed a fixed and known speed for the vessels. Again, as I said in my previous presentation, ships do not trade at predetermined speeds. Those who pay for the fuel, that is the ship owner if the ship is on the spot market on voyage charter, or the charterer if the ship is on the time or bareboat charter, will choose an optimal speed as a function of bunker price and the state of the market, specifically the spot rates. What is perhaps not immediately obvious is that even though the owners and time charter speed optimization problem appear at first glance different, the optimal ship speed for both problems turns out to be the same. So, if you do the math, these two formulas lead to the same problem.
The maritime transport is very important for
So now some
Spain,
more
get a good connection with
things
the
on
rest
slow
of
steaming as
the
an operational measure to reduce emissions. At sea,
we can easily
main engines are running to provide the power to move the vessel, and auxiliary engines are also running to provide heat, hot water, lighting, etc. Fuel consumption FC is a function of the power provided by the main engine and mainly depends on the speed of the vessel. The time spent at sea depends on the distance sailed. So,
yesterday,
when
previous lecture,
you sail at a normal speed, you consume fuel consumption of F0 in tons per day, and the total time that the vessel needs to cover the distance L is given by this formula. While in port, main engines are switched off and auxiliary engines are running, and time in port depends on various parameters such as the loading and unloading time. We'll discuss this later on. And we assume a constant fuel consumption, as you can see in the slide. So imagine that we're going to investigate the scenario where a ship owner or charterer chooses to sail at a reduced speed. At sea, there will be a new fuel consumption. The total time at sea will change. It will be actually increased. But we assume that fuel consumption in port and the total time in port will not change. Fuel consumption is given by this equation, where K and N are known constants. I said before that in most cases N is assumed to be equal to 3. We assume a cubic relation. The so-called cubic law, which is true in case the vessels sail at speeds slower than 20 knots, and it can go as high as 4.5 for container vessels sailing in speeds like 22, 23 knots. In practice, there is no law. So this actually fuel consumption depends on weather, on the condition of the hull, and in other parameters. For our case, we will assume that the fuel consumption at sea after reducing speed will be given by this formula, which takes into account the fuel consumption before the speed reduction and the speed of the vessel before the speed reduction and after the speed reduction.
They are high quality or specific.
If you can do the math, it is obvious that after reducing speed, fuel consumption will be decreased, and assuming time in port at least remains the same, will have this effect. And if we could reduce time in port, it will be even more beneficial.
Let's start saying that
obviously, emissions are also reduced, and bunker costs will reduce too.
Around the whole Europe.
As you can see, the difference in fuel consumption is negative, which means that there will be a reduction in fuel consumption. The same is true for the fuel costs.
So
what's the major problem with implementing slow steaming? Well, the first major problem is slow steaming leads to increase of total time. If time admin port remains constant, it means that we will definitely need more ships to carry the same throughput. If we can decrease port time, maybe there will be no need to add more ships. That is not the case actually, because we cannot reduce time in port that much in order to avoid the need for the extra vessels. In any case, there will be decrease in emissions, fuel consumption in both cases, which means that slow steaming is beneficial both for the owner or charterer and for the environment.
Not only the environment, but the overall quality.
I'll present you an example. That's what happens on a container terminal, but that's also true for all cases. Main time components are the waiting time before berthing, and the other major component is the service time. Let's investigate if there is room to decrease port time in order not to add the extra vessels to maintain the same throughput. First of all, let's see an example in order to get to realize the true effect of slow steaming. You can see the increase in transit time in round trip time is given in days as a result of speed reduction for 3 different legs. One is from Aarhus to Bremerhaven, the other is from Antwerp to Goya Tauro, and the third one is from Valencia to Felixstowe. If the design, the first figure shows a vessel that has a design speed of 21.5 knots, and the other is a container vessel that has a design speed of 23 knots. As you can see, a reduction of let's take one this case. This is the Antwerp Goya Tauro leg. It is 2,371 nautical miles that the vessel has to cover. By reducing speed 20% of the original speed, this means that there will be an increase of more than 1 day in transit time. If we reduce speed, let's say 40%, we'll need approximately 3 days to cover the same distance. Just recall that Maersk Line went to half of the design speed in some cases, which means that adding an extra vessel, I mean, you cannot avoid adding an extra vessel. It is very important to find ways to decrease time in port. This will help to reduce emissions, and in some cases it may help us to avoid adding an extra vessel in the route. In a container terminal, how can decrease service time? We can, there is huge literature on the so-called berth allocation problem and the key crane assignment problem and the key crane scheduling problem. These are problems related to the service time. We can have better allocation and more efficient operations at port, so that we can decrease service time. And regarding the waiting time, I mean, the vessel arrives, approaches to the port, but it has to wait to be serviced, and this is the waiting time, and this is related to the various berthing policies Some ports have a policy of first come, first served. Others try to minimize the total time. Others maximize the total profit, giving priority
not only
to
for
vessels.
the
Other ports
transport
have
of freight,
service
but
to
mainly
big
for the
customers.
use of people.
So again, you can see in this figure,
We have to
it describes all
to consider that
the sequence from the time that the ship approaches the port until the time, the departure time, when the ship leaves the port. From the arrival to berthing, there are various problems and conditions that may prevent
many
prompt berthing of the vessel.
and
These have to
costly
do with
motorways have
adverse
been
weather conditions,
built
for example,
for
cabin
the
pilot
use
not being available,
passengers,
berth not
the use of
being
people.
available,
These motorways can
various
also be
procedures and
used
formalities.
as freight, so
And
there
as I
is
said,
a high
this
investment
berth allocation problem and the key crane assignment problem and key crane scheduling problem may help
while
reduce
there is not this
service time.
public investment.
Now, the vessel is berthed, and from berthing to loading, unloading, I mean from the time the ship has berthed to the time the service has actually started, there are a few problems that may occur and prevent the prompt loading and unloading of the vessel. And these are related to various procedures and formalities. The ship may not be ready, or maybe there is bad weather. In most cases, the major problem is cargo handling equipment not being ready. And there are other problems, as you can see in this figure. And then from loading and unloading operations to the departure of the vessel, there are this category of problems like insufficient water depth in channels, or adverse weather conditions, or tug and pilot not being available, that also prevent the prompt departure of the vessel. So if we are in position to decrease the total time in port, it will be beneficial for the environment because it will reduce emissions, and it will also help us if possible, not to add the extra vessels that is required, because of the fact that when we reduce speed, we increase the time at sea. But as I said, in most cases, it's actually not possible to have a constant turnaround time. Another major problem to slow steaming or to choosing the optimal speed for a vessel are the so-called charter party speeds. An exception to the case that the ship owner or the charterer can freely choose an optimal speed for the ship is the case the ship is on spot charter and speed is prescribed in the charter party contract, either explicitly like speed is say 14 knots, or implicitly in the case pickup and delivery dates are prescribed. For example, in a time charter, the ship owner provides the vessel for a specific amount of money to the charterer, who is responsible for paying the bunker. And in this case, the owner is not willing to sail at a slower speed if the other party is the one that will enjoy the benefit of the reduced fuel consumption. So one way to overcome this, since charter party speeds may not be the optimal ones, are to draft, like BIMCO did, these so-called slow steaming clauses, which are clauses that allow a vessel to slow steam, and they have provisions for the owner and the charterer to share the cost and the benefit, actually the benefit from the slow steaming, which is the reduced bunker cost.
It would not be possible
or to the person who is involved with the decision is possible. Cities change over time.
This, the fact that the owner and the charterer have contradicted goals can be highlighted from the following example, and I'll use a case that is not related to shipping. Just imagine you rented a room in a hotel. You go into the room and you open the lights, you start the air conditioning, and then you decide to take a short walk somewhere nearby the hotel, but you leave your room without turning off the lights and without switching off the air conditioning. And why you do this? You do this because when you rent a hotel room, you just pay for the room and you don't not pay for the energy that you consume. So for you, for the customer, there is no reason to save energy when you don't care for spending for saving energy from lighting or from the energy that is used to power the air conditioning, because you are not paid for it. So what do hotel owners do in this case? Since they cannot charge you per unit of energy you use, in most cases you are giving this magnetic card, so when you go out of the room, the lights and all other energy consuming equipment are switched off. This is a huge category of problems. We call them split incentives or principal agent problems, and are related to the fact that there is one party that pays for energy, that pays for the equipment that saves energy, and it's another actor that is being benefited from the reduced energy use. Again, when you rent a house, you cannot ask the owner of the house to install, for example, double windows in order to reduce
and we will
the energy consumption, and the
technological
owner
development
in the flat is not willing to do so because he is the one that will pay for the
concentration of flow in some maritime roads.
But you are renting the house, you are going to be benefiting from the reduced
price paid
consumption because you will pay less in the energy bill. The same problem exists in shipping. We have these 4 cases. Actually, these are the 4 cases of the so-called principal agent problem. This figure comes from OECD and the International Energy Agency.
Green potential.
He describes the 4 cases where these principal agent problem may occur, and in the red you can see how these cases are applied to shipping.
So we started this process and we realized that
again, depending on the contractual agreement between the ship owner and the charterer, for example, let's say in case 2, in time charter, the ship owner pays for the energy, actually the charterer pays for the energy, and the charterer pays a rent to the agent who is the ship owner. So the ship owner has no incentive to reduce fuel consumption or to install any measures that are related
of the
reduce
motorways of the
fuel
SIM is to
consumption.
communication
And
about
for example, has also no incentive to agree on use slow steaming, because when slow steaming, it will be you, the charterer, that will be benefited from the reduced fuel consumption, but he will not.
One of them is
If you are a ship owner
why some of the sources
who will pay for the energy consumed in case one, you may ask a shipbuilder or the shipyard to install some specific measure that may reduce energy consumption. But the shipyard is not willing to do so, because it will be you that you will benefit from the energy payment, but the shipyard has to pay the increased cost for the energy saving device. The shipyard will only agree to do so if you pay the extra cost for installing it.
Regulation and the most services.
So, even though in many cases there are measures that can reduce fuel consumption and ship emissions, like slow steaming, there are various barriers that prevent the adoption of such measures. One related incentive related to slow steaming is the so-called virtual arrival incentive, and it is a process that recognizes known inefficiencies in the supply chain. For example, avoiding spending time awaiting a berth when you know that there exists port congestion in a specific port, when you can reduce the use of fuel and associated emissions by implementing a mutually agreed reduction in the vessel's speed in order to arrive at that port at an agreed arrival time. In plain English, it means that there is no need to sail your vessel at full speed if you have to wait, when on the other hand you could sail at a slower speed and have a reduced fuel bill, and also these additional benefits for the environment. And this is also related to the so-called just-in-time principle. So, when you know, one, that there is a known delay in a port, a mutual agreement between the ship operator and the charterer to perform this so-called virtual arrival voyage can be agreed, can be made, and you have to involve other parties in the decision-making process, such as the terminal cargo owner, because you last from that terminal to berth you at an agreed arrival time, and the agreed charter party clause that will be established will have special provisions for virtual arrival, and in most cases there will be a provision regarding how the bunker savings will be split between these two parties. In most cases, bunker savings are split into half, so the ship owner, by implementing this virtual arrival, which is implemented only in cases where port congestion is evident in the port, you sail at a slower speed, you arrive in time there, at the port, so there is no congestion for you, you do not wait, and the owners get an improvement on the time charter equivalent earnings. Actually, the voyage earnings are enhanced as demurrage, which is the penalty for late arrival, is kept in hold by the owner. The owner also gets half of the savings. The charter sees savings in the total freight bill. He gets also half of the savings. In the environment, gets this reduction in emissions. So this probably is a win-win scenario. And the only problem to that is you cannot you cannot implement this slow steaming unless the charter party, the legal document, allows you to do so, which in this case requires the adoption of this so-called slow steaming clause, or in the case of virtual arrival, we also have this virtual arrival clause for voyage charter parties, a draft of which you can see it here, and this clause to the charter party says that any extra time used on the sea voyage as a direct consequence of the vessel adjusting speed in order to arrive in time will be compensated by the charterers to the owners. And there is another provision for on how the bunker savings will be divided among these two parties, the charterers and the owners. So,
unpleasant to know it.
That was the presentation about. Slow steaming is very beneficial, but we have this major problem being the increase in total time. And I show you some ways which will be used to decrease time in port. And slow steaming could also be used in cases
in the Naples, we have
virtual arrival incentives to arrive
Barcelona
time
and
without
the
having
port
to
of
wait.
Civitavecchia near Roma, Livorno, and currently
The main problem is that you cannot do so unless this is allowed by the charter party, and this is the clause that allows you to do so. So that was all about slow steaming. Thank you very much for your time. I think this concludes my presentation, and I don't know, Thanos, can you help me get some feedback? If you have any questions, get some feedback from the audience. I mean, I extremely thank you all are watching this online, and also the NTUA students present.
Technology and also in the smart
Do you have any questions for Christos topics?
They have studied already. They have monitored the energy consumption in one of the municipal buildings. For example, simply turning the bathroom lights off at night, it doesn't happen because you haven't turned them off.
Please give us some feedback. How did you find the Christos lectures today?
That kind of control can be changed.
Was everything okay?
250,000 passengers
Municipality doesn't have it, of course, but it's not much money because the city has done it for years. They are not. How things are moving in the mountains, you know, that we have.
Okay. Okay. Anyway,
thank you very much.
We will continue with Nikos Manoutas presentations in about
have a system
20 minutes.
that controls the whole system.
So see you there again. Thank you very much.
An idea of what things are happening, and so if you can close the event, you can use the money much better because you use it not to fix things afterwards or to heal people who have been hurt, but to avoid that this happens. And so with other companies we have special memorandums of understanding. And this
drivers
can
sail this vessel because
topic, but it also helps us convince our colleagues on what possible new options they have, what they can do that is different, how they can work in a different way and change their approach to their everyday job, thus making a better job in the whole.
There are another characteristics of the ships.
The water level of the rivers will be very happy in knowing that there's a software that will enable them to do their job better.
And other like number of crews or passenger cabins we have.
Problems, some very serious problems.
Some of the pictures of the vessels used. This is the Bonaven.
I have tried to explain to you what the smart city is. It's a concept, it's technology. Of course, it's technology.
This is the smart
city is also a vision. You need to know where the city is going to, and you need to have the rails, but you also need to have the sleepers.
And
the sleepers
one
are
other
interesting
issue
is
the
outdoor
port integration. Ports have to provide not only the
working, but you need both things. So there are many cities that have many interesting apps for the smartphones, where all the mobility is electrical, but if they don't have
unloaded, but also the access, which is very important in ports, which many times has been surrounded by a crowded population and cities, and you have to provide access, easy access for heavy vehicles without need to cross the city.
When I spoke about university means, of course,
if we take cost, we can only say that
it also means
when we have
physics, of course, it means chemistry.
Non-accompanying vehicles, the handling cost is important. We have in the Transfenica, Bilbao, Sibiu, around
economics to help
17,000
to help find models that will make you understand what happens if you take one course of action or another. It means philosophy,
and
because they have to elaborate the
also
vision. It means literature to help you communicate, because if you do not convince people to change their way of
price
living,
for
if you don't convince
the
us
ship,
to
and
use
these
public transport or in other cities bicycle, where it's impossible in other cities, then you cannot really change the whole thing. So it means the whole of the research must be involved in this process, not just one technological faculty, because the smart city again is not only technological. Technology enables the
competition from other shipping lines and from other models.
In the association, we
one
have
of
created
the issues that we have in this service, but also with different restrictions on placed on different models. The reduction of emissions from ships, the sulfur content of marine fuels, currently being promoted, is also a challenge for this platform
all the
around
members of
Europe.
the association to send us their projects.
What the transport policy in Spain
so with
has
this we have elaborated metrics, we have an elaborated database in which we have classified the various projects that we have and the characteristics and the technologies and the costs and the time of implementation, so that we have a very clear database of what companies and the city and the institutions can make towards a smart city. And when we have opportunities, we have projects or things we can do, we know where to get things from. So this is a very important concept, because starting from the data you have is an essential
from the point of view of regulation.
That involves technology or transformation is necessary and is not part of our culture. It will come in, but it is essential that we remember that
general rate is
and measurements which really consent you to choose one thing or the other, and not just and only because you think it's better.
Time and many other parameters, but for source shipping vessels is 1.3.
Putting things together. A municipality has many instruments, many planning
almost
instruments.
40% less in that core view. And cargo handling, which is another issue, important issue, especially when we have non-accompanied traffic.
Okay, you had an course and the urban lab tell you all about the
planning,
and so you know
the
that
drivers are allowed to load and load
made
their own vehicle, but when it's not accompanied,
smart city.
the
sustainable energy action
cargo
plan,
handling provides the
Protocol,
possibility to self-handling.
It is really
that
well
means
designed.
to
It was
provide their own service when we talk of dedicated terminals, people who has a terminal for their own traffic. But in the case of source sea shipping and motorways of the sea, that if for vessels, ro-packs, or ferries, cargo control. So the self-handling is also available for all the cases, not only for the case of dedicated terminals. So this, which is one important issue, as cargo handling has a big importance in that case, it has a facility for motorways of the sea and source shipping to get cheaper prices. On the other hand, the PP, the ministry launched a plan of infrastructure for a strategic plan for infrastructure, transport and housing in past year, and there I can mention that among the strategic objectives there was the promotion of sustainable mobility and integration of transport systems with an intermodal focus. Management of intermodal transport, inside the management of intermodal transport, it was included the promotion of the maritime land transport chains through the source shipping, motorways of the sea and rail terminal. So that means that in the general strategy of the transport ministry, the motorways of the sea and source shipping has its place.
And to you, a bit cleaner, a bit better, a bit healthier.
Finally, when some conclusions, most has to be considered in a wider reason, not exclusively for freight service, because sometimes services with freight and passengers can provide good outputs. Ro-pax vessels have higher operating costs.
So if you could have money that is going to be spent
but sometimes complementary income can be obtained from board sales. Ro-ro vessels carrying unaccompanied semi-trailers have proved to be very efficient and need to support by the simplifying of the operation. And about the question of funding, we can assume that funding will be probably necessary while current status of investment and regulation remains.
For itself, or one day will pay for itself with the savings it has, but it is not automatically.
We have to consider taking account that most is still at the early stage of development, and we will need some standardization in terms of funding and consideration of external costs among all models. Additional studies will be needed to understand and take actions to promote the use of motorways of the sea.
Structural fund.
Now, if there are any questions,
Research in Italy, MUR, just made a call, and the results were given out on Monday for projects on the smart cities and communities to make people work together, companies work together with research on this. Genoa won several of those. Violena is a very interesting fund. Violena is money that the European Union
the total tonnage included not only general cargo, but also
you apply for it, you go and ask, you say, I have this project in which I can improve the energy efficiency of my buildings, or I can buy electric vehicles or energy efficient vehicles, or
liquid
change
and
the
solid
public lighting, turn it towards solid state lighting.
included
Please give me the money
in
to
all.
help me
So that means
create a business case, because a
include,
municipality has 1, 2, 3, 15
chemical
people, whatever,
products and
working
so
on
the
general services, who
part
buy
of
things,
this
buy
also
products,
is
they buy the
general
paper or
product,
the
which,
microphone, or they make
when we
the calls
thought
for
that
offers,
this
but
high
they do not
100
have time and the skills to create something more innovative. So the European Investment Investments gives the municipality the money. The money means 2 million euro. Okay, I mean, it doesn't mean little money. For the 2 million euros, you build this, the feasibility projects, the studies of exactly how much energy you're spending, how much you will save, how you will do it, the technical studies, and then you have the call for offers for ESCOs. You know what an ESCO is? Well, an ESCO is an energy service company. It's a company that
very
boilers, and with the savings they will pay for the investment they have made. So for 10 years they keep the savings, and then you get a boiler that is very efficient and you save lots of money. I'm simplifying the model, but more or less this is the idea. Okay, so ESCOs will win this, then the European Investment Bank is willing to make a loan to those ESCOs. They have a loan that can be 90 million euros. With this loan, the ESCOs make the investments, the energy efficiency investments, and repay with the savings. The municipality keeps on paying what it was paying, or a little bit less, for 10 years, 15, 20, whatever the business case has shown. And then
this
the result is that without having spent money on your own, it's always public money, and it's European money, but without having spent money that the municipality did not have, you have managed to make the whole city efficient. So we are going to apply for Millennium. We're working very hard on that. Other cities have already done it, but it's one of the instruments that can give you an idea of what is happening. Let me
but a very precise
check the time.
In that sense.
So, in a sense, what we are doing with the smart city is juxtaposing the grids of needs. And I will tell you something more about this later, because you need to listen to the people of strategy, political strategies that have been chosen by the politicians, needs
helps to provide solutions.
Available technologies, funding, which kind of funding you have, the rules. So you need to juxtapose all those grids and try to find the right hole, the right place for each kind of project, be it mobility, building, government, energy, solid-state lighting, or other projects. So it is a very complicated work that connects to what I told you about integrated planning. It really needs to put all things together in order to make the whole something better. Okay, so it is not something that happens automatic. And if someone says, is this a smart city or not? You cannot answer. I mean, a smart city is not defined. There are many researchers that say Bologna is smarter than Milan, which is smarter than Copenhagen, which is smarter than Colorado. It doesn't matter. I mean, it depends, of course, on the parameters that they're using on the indexes.
Well, the issue
but the idea is that you have to manage the process. You have to start the process of transforming your city, being aware of what you're doing.
Magic concept, magic word.
I spoke about the needs. Now, when we start speaking about smart city, we start speaking about technology, and so engineers have great ideas. They have incredible things that create energy or save. And
inside this concept,
maybe many people will come in with many good technological projects.
We can be very restrictive.
And the people tell you, for example,
some other services
a machine that you put at home, and the grandpa just puts his finger inside the machine, and everyone knows in the hospital.
Consider, for example, the case of Lolo or Roro.
Look at this machine does not measure whether he's happy in a sense.
Well,
and
maybe
he needs to walk 10 minutes every day, because that will be more important for his health and for his living on than having the exact level of blood pressure measured every day.
We can
so we met with some of the associations we know in this very humble process that we have done towards a smart city.
Lolo, even important motorways of the sea services can
we spoke about smart city, and they said,
the Transfenica service I mentioned was mainly Roro, but also the carry container. So in that sense,
this kind of idea taught us that you really
we can contemplate high-frequency, high-quality service,
and the needs are not always known by university or by the companies or by the municipalities.
Type of
right now, we voted
the important issue is that we
whoever
differentiate
not discussing
the needs
really
for
emerges that people want to be listened to.
And,
all the political
more
phenomena
important
in
this case is when we identify or we try to include it in motorways of the city, maybe in some source sequence services. This service to provide territorial cooperation in the region or the Europe. In that case, the needs and the requirements are very different, and we have
you want to play soccer in your home. Maybe you want to develop soccer fields in your home because that is what makes your happiness. And what does this have to do with the smart city? It has. I mean, in the planning of the city, you have to take into account what people really want, whether they want silence. Is silence a value? Maybe it is. We are forgetting this. We never consider it that maybe we want it. So it is important to be able to listen to the needs. That's why we have created this connection. And we are working in the association to have smart people telling us. So we are creating groups, working groups, in which we listen to the various categories proposed by them, whether it be the disabled, the old people, or schools, or whoever that come with the needs. And this is going to be connected with the technology, with the research, with the institutions, always in order to make a better process, to make a better city. We have also tried to promote the idea that Genoa does not become smart if Torino is stupid, okay? Because the smart city process needs to involve everyone. And it is not something that only one city wins and the others lose. So we are promoting the Smart Italy. We're promoting the idea of transferring our experience and our good practices to other cities and gain from theirs. So we have signed a memorandum of understanding, a political one, which of course is the first level. Without that you cannot work. We have signed a political understanding with Torino and Milano, which are the two cities that are near Genoa in this famous industrial or previously industrial triangle, in order to move together both at a lobbying level, in transferring information. We're working with the Politecnico di Torino and the university connecting together, and the municipalities and the offices in order to learn from each other. Also, we take this at a governmental level, so we've been working with the previous government, with the present government, with the Ministry of Research, transferring our experience and trying to help build the laws they are making on the smart city process in a different way. There are other networks. For example, there's the City Protocol. City Protocol Society is a very interesting project which is being promoted by Barcelona. And many cities in the world are participating in this process. Well, Genoa is one, but there's Milan, Turin, Paris, London, San Francisco, New York, Seoul, Yokohama, Hamburg. So together we are trying to apply the same concept of the smart city, of extending the connections, the best practices, using all the stakeholders and putting them together, trying to turn the city into something better. So you can also find this this way of working of the City Protocol, which considers the cities, as I told you before, the process, and it uses the same kind of organization in a very similar way to what happened with the Internet. When Internet was created and the rules of Internet were made by the Internet Protocol Society through a rough agreement, a rough consensus, and this is the same model applied to cities. Of course, it's going to be less strict and less mandatory, because in the cities you cannot force an African city to do what you're doing in Europe, but you can show the best practices and involve companies, involve research, involve the institutions in this process, and of course the people. And this is a very interesting project. Genoa is the interim steering committee of the City Protocol Society, which starts from a very interesting planning of the city, of the various aspects, the water, the waste, the electricity. So it turned. I will. Are there any questions until now? Do you have any questions?
Which slides back? Do you have even more slides back?
I'm going to proceed telling you something about concrete things, because I told you about the theory of a smart city. Now, a smart city, as we saw, has the rails, and then it has the sleepers that are things that need to be done. Okay? So I will speak about some of the European projects we have. European projects are a very specific model. We have a specific model, a way of working together, which aims to European integration, that it does so through very concrete and detailed projects put together by normally different companies, and this involves all sorts of players, research and institutions, in order to been lucky or has been good, or I don't know, but we have won the call in 2011. We were the only city in Europe to have won the 3 calls, which concern the integrated planning, heating and cooling, and energy efficiency. We're working together with the university and all those projects, and they will bring the city of Genoa around 6 million euros, because we co-participate. It's a 7th research program, so you need to participate with 50%, and you will get 50%, but this concerns the research, so we can put personnel into it. And this means that we are creating jobs, or we are at least maintaining the jobs that exist, because the companies working will have people working there. So this, in a moment of crisis like we have, this is very important. So I will shortly tell you something about those projects, so that you understand exactly how a smart city then becomes something concrete. Transform is the project that we consider the most important one, because it is the one that tries to find the model of the smart city at a European level. It doesn't have much money. In all, we get 600,000 euros for the city of Genoa, which is divided among university, city, and regional energy agency, and the region Liguria in Brussels, and Enel, the distribution company, who is a partner. But it is very important, because this is the project that will find a model, and the European Union will probably use this model of transformation to decide how it will spend the money in its future investments in the 14-20 budgeting. Of course, we won't be finished. We still have 2 years to go. The projects have just started. But Transform puts together many cities. We have 6 cities, which are Amsterdam, which is coordinating the project, Hamburg, Copenhagen, Vienna, Lyon, and Genoa. And we have players that are institutional, like the cities. We have research. We have, in Genoa, we have also the university. We have the Denmark University and Danish University, Hamburg Institute of Research, HESPOL, which is the sort of regional agency for energy in Lyon, and we have companies. We have Siemens, we have Enel, we have the RDF, and other companies all over the world. We have 19 partners working together. How do we work together? I don't know if you're aware, European projects are usually divided into working packages, because it is a very integrated planning way of proceeding. So you have working packages, you divide the activities into work packages that normally have a leader, and you show how they're going to connect and what the timing is and which deliverables you are going to give and when. So you need to plan this when you present the project. So the first work package studies the state of the art, finding out the KPIs, the key performance indicators. So we said before, data are essential. So we are starting with the data and which data are important for each city, because of course Vienna will not care about the data concerning the port. But for us it's important. Maybe they will care about the immigration from Eastern Europe, which is not so important for us, etc. But in the overall planning, just think wind farms are easy to make in the north of Europe, okay, in Copenhagen, out of Copenhagen, if you have ever flown inside, you know, there are enormous wind farms. We cannot have this here. I mean, the sea goes down immediately, so it is almost impossible unless engineers come out with something really creative and innovative. For the time being, it is very difficult to have a wind farm in the Mediterranean Sea, in this part of the Mediterranean. So each city had its own characteristics, its own vision, but there are certainly common key performance indicators that are the same for everyone. And so in the first work package, which is led by Copenhagen, we are finding those. Of course, the university is working very, very much on this, and starting from the Sustainable Energy Action Plan, which you have heard about before, so using the indicators that have been studied. Then work package 2 works on the transformation agenda. But before getting to work package 2, we also have work package 3 that studies work package 4 in fact is the smart urban labs. In each city we have found a sort of pilot project, not funded by the European Union, so it is only the study of how one district is being transformed into a smart city or is planned as a smart district. In our case, we have taken the CatMed project in Valtry. Maybe they have spoken about it yesterday when they presented the urban plan, which is a smart district. So we are using this district and the indicators that were already elaborated during the process in order to think how a smart district should be in a Mediterranean country, which is totally different from the north. I mean, we have buildings that exist and we cannot bring them down very often, most of the time, and we cannot move the railways all of a sudden because we decided it's not good there, because you cannot demolish the ancient villas that are behind the railway, etc., etc. So the smart urban labs, together with the KPIs and the state of the art, go to work package to develop this transformation agenda. So how are we going to change the city, and what do we want? What are the essential elements? Then we will make a tool, a software tool, a sort of a command center, using the existing one, so trying, because the project does not have much money, but we are wanting to work with things that already exist. And then we will use all the experience gathered and learned to disseminate the project. And this is led by the City of Genoa, the work package 5 concerning the replication and dissemination. We will create master classes with what we have called buddy cities, that is cities with which we have good connection, good real connections, direct connections, and invite them to learn from the process and try to apply the same model. So you see, the smart city is really fascinating because it's something that is quite obvious. I mean, you say, well, of course it should be like that. I mean, a city should be planned like that, but it isn't. It isn't. It's something totally new, both for us, but also for other countries. And it is a way of changing the mentality of the way in which you manage the city. It's important for politicians and for people working inside. And for the first time, a very strong connection and very strong and practical connection with the other stakeholders is taking place. Because it did happen that the university spoke with the municipality, or that the municipality spoke with the Port Authority or with a company, but it was not systematic. It was not aimed at a common goal. So this is the essential aspect of the smart city. This is the way in which the process will work. So we will study the status, the SWOT analyses, and find the methodology. And the timing, it will take 3 years to complete the project. We have already started in January. We had the kickoff meeting, and we are working together with all the other partners with meetings that happen quite often. They are funded, of course, by the project in order to put together all the pieces of the work package. The pilot projects concern each one of the cities. Some cities have, for example, Amsterdam has a district where the Ajax Stadium is, so boys probably know about it. And they had some industries and commercial venues and the stadium and businesses, but it's being a bit abandoned, so they are turning it into a smart district, adding wind farms within the buildings and connecting it with smart grids. Vienna is planning, Vienna is going to have an enormous rise in population. It's planning like in the next, I don't know, 10 years, 100,000 people increase. It's really growing very fast. So they are planning new districts and they are planning them smart from the beginning. Lyon is going to improve the Pardieu city district where they already are investing, but they are making the new important station, train station for Lyon, and they are turning the whole thing into a smart project. We are using the Green Apple system. Copenhagen has a part of the port that is not being used as port anymore, and it is turning it. It has conducted some very thorough studies of the population's needs. For example, it has an interesting concept of the 5-minute city, things you can do within 5 minutes. No? Okay, so that's one of the concepts that you can insert in the planning of the city if you make it smart. So, well, this is more or less the overall view of this project. Those are the deliverables we have in the various months, month 1, 2, 5, whatever. You have to give the project manual, the internet and public portal, the coherent description of the state of the art. So you see it's very well defined. And if you do not respect the timings, you have to explain very clearly why not. Otherwise, you won't get the money or you will have to give it back. So this way of working of the European projects is very useful, especially in the context of the smart city. It is, however. Then we have the project R2Cities. R2Cities concerns energy efficiency. We have chosen, we work together with Spain and Turkey, okay, Istanbul and Valladolid. Then there are companies and research institutes from all over Europe. And we are studying the diagnosis of how to make a social housing building more efficient. We have an enormous amount of buildings from the 60s and the 70s where energy was not an issue. Okay, energy started being an issue in 73, but then we forgot about it. We thought after the Gulf War everything was okay again. So buildings built at the time only wanted to save money in the building. There was no planning on what would happen in the future. Also in social housing there is a peculiar aspect, which is that the savings go to the people who live there, who very often don't even pay the bills. So it is very difficult to have the model of the ESCO model in which you save the money by changing the boiler, but then the savings go to someone who's not willing to participate in the investment. So it is interesting to study, to have the money to study how to apply innovation and technology, and also a replicable business model in social housing. So we study the conservation technology, a very thorough and technical approach to the research of how it works. Then we have the 3 pilot projects. Genoa is using the case of Begato. Begato is in one of the 2 valleys going up from the city of Genoa towards the north, the Val Polcevera, and it is an enormous, we call it the dam, okay, La Diga, because it really stops the valley. It is a wonderful place. I mean, the apartments have an incredible view. They are in the green, but they are really, they freeze because it's really cold and the heating is really bad. And it was built when it really didn't matter. So we're working, and as our partners in the project, we also have ABB, which has all the technology for studying, for example, shutters that will open and close according to the climate that is inside. We have a bank. We have Unicredit, which has a joint venture with the World Wildlife Fund, and it has created a company called Officine Verdi, and they are studying the economic feasibility of this kind of project, both for the municipalities and for the companies. Then, of course, well, again, here we have a planning. This one lasts longer. It's 4 years, and we have a number of deliverables. We have not started yet. We still have not had the kickoff meeting, but we have been working on the project for a long time. Then we have the Celsius. Celsius uses, again, we have other pilot projects going on in London, in Rotterdam, in Köln, in Göteborg. which has been moved, but it's still in Sweden, even though here I put it somewhere else. Genoa, and we each have pilot projects for district heating and cooling. So again, we have the system of the work packages. District heating and cooling means that you produce the heating in one place and you take it elsewhere. In Genoa, the pilot project is specifically connected on a new way, a new technology that will use the change of pressure from how the gas arrives through the gas duct to how it needs to be transferred in city gas, and the energy was absolutely wasted. So they are putting a sort of turbine to a sort of propeller to use this energy and create heat in a very small district, a micro district in the other valley, Val Bisagno, where the gas company has its offices and its plants. If the model is interesting and can work both from a technical and an economical point of view, it can be replicated in other places in the city where this takes place, and probably extended to other parts surrounding the plant where it's going to be implemented. We have other projects. Okay, I went a bit into detail with those 3 projects, which are the main ones in the smart cities and communities. But you don't need to have the name smart for a project to be smart. It's smart if you're thinking and planning in the whole framework that I told you about. So, for example, we have the Illuminate project, which concerns solid-state lighting. You probably know that through solid-state lighting and technologies, software technologies, you can get something like 70% saving in the expenses you have for lighting. It depends on where you start from. This project studies with companies like Philips and Enel and Arup what can be done to change the lighting in venues that are high quality. So we have the aquarium in Genoa. We have the external part of the ancient port, the waterfront. We have the Maritime Museum in Crete and the Maritime Museum in Lithuania. We have the Rotterdam Zoo, the Experimentarium in Copenhagen, which is the museum for kids. Experimentarium is on science and technology. And we have the Belfast City Hall, which is where the peace agreement was signed in Belfast, and which will be inaugurated in a couple of months. And all these have the lighting changed to solid-state lighting, which has to respect not only the savings, but also the quality of life it can give. And it can give different lumen, different colors, different things that you can change and move. For example, the very interesting project in the Belfast City Hall, which is being used also as a venue where they have concerts and public events. It is considered a very, very important historical and event building. They can change the color according to the event taking on, a bit like the Empire State Building in New York, which changes according to the 4th of July or Gay Pride or whatever is happening that day. And of course, we hope we will be able to replicate this once we study. It's been going on for a year and a half, and once we find the results of the project, we think that we will be able to transfer this to other parts of the city and other cities. This is always required in a European project. Then we have Very School, which studies energy efficiency in one school in Genoa, and it is not only the software for controlling the energy efficiency, but also it implies educating the people who use the systems. Okay, because one of the, for example, to give you an idea, in the R2 cities, the one with the housing, with the social housing building, one of the plans that the university originally proposed was making a sort of fissure, a hole on top and at the bottom of each apartment inside, because that would consent the air to pass and create a wall that would create a sort of refurbishing. Okay, but we said, wait a minute, the people who live there will immediately put Scotch tape and cover the holes. I mean, it's certain that it will happen. So you have to be aware that you need to know who's living there and what kind of action you're taking. iCity is a very challenging project because it concerns not only the open data in Italy are almost a bad word. I mean, we don't even speak about open data. We keep them to ourselves, and I don't know what we'll do with them, but more and more the European Union and national laws are forcing us to open our data, which is the opposite of what London is doing. For example, London opens everything. But this project, iCity, in which the Greater London Authority and Barcelona and Bologna are partners, opens the platforms, which means that you can get access to real-time data. And we are going to open up the platforms for meteorology, which means also the control of all the floods and things like that, the instruments we have right now. It means the Wi-Fi. We are opening also the mobility, the controls, and we are going to offer those open platforms for people to create apps. So we expect to have about 300 apps proposed by students, companies, university at the end, using those open platforms, which might mean tomorrow that you can even integrate even more. You can even enter into using the sensors. Imagine, for example, a camera that is pointed for traffic on a street. Maybe someone could create an app that uses, I don't know, 1 minute per hour. You can send this app to use it to see something else, or and create something that I know where young people meet, and it will show some app. I don't know what the interest will be. This is the people who will create them. But it is a very challenging project. Harmonize considers the resilience, that is flexibility of planning the safety and security in a city, and we have chosen the part of the city that we have chosen is the zone of Marassi, where we have a stadium, we have the prison, which is inside the city, we have the highway getting there, we have commercial venues, we have a river that can flood, and so we're trying to put together all the possible sensors and players that somehow act in that zone, and creating a software that will help us control unforeseen events that you cannot plan and therefore somehow prevent, but things that cannot be foreseen, but you can, however, react rapidly if you have integrated the whole system with what police do, what the firemen can do, what people can do, what you can do with SMS, etc., with text, etc. Peripheria concerns using the technology of the living labs. Living labs, again, means connecting the people, so getting to know what people want, what product they want. You use people as guinea pigs of the products they are going to buy, but they are the ones who design them. So people in the living lab tell you, okay, the product you're building, I want it more like this or more like that. And so you adapt it to those who are going to use it. It's a new methodology that is being used very much in Europe and all over the world. And so we are studying tourist services in some parts of the city. Elimed studies energy efficiency in part of the city which had been damaged by the flood in the Piazzale Adriatico zone. Those are some of the projects we are making, just to give you an idea of very concrete things that are taking place. But I would also like to remind you that the idea of the vision means that you have to think of where you want to go and what you want the city to be. So what we did with the Genoa Smart City Association was do a full day of brainstorming and working together with all players involved in the association, and trying to find out what Genova Smart City, what Genoa as a smart city would be for us. Most of the things that emerged can be applied to other cities, but it was important to understand, just like the urban plan had a decalogue of the 10 points you probably were told about, we used the same concept, but this time we did it together with the people to elaborate which were the 10 aspects that we do want in our smart city of the future and possibly of the present. So Genoa Smart City is Mediterranean, beautiful and full of light. It is a Mediterranean city. It has a different sea. We saw that wind farms are different here. It is beautiful. It has ancient buildings which cannot be touched and must be respected, and somehow are very often smart themselves. You only need to respect what they wear and change the technologies to adapt them to them. It has light, and we have no solar panels. Why is that? I mean, we should use the light somehow, so we should take advantage of the wealth we have. You need an integrated planning and management, and this is essential. And through the association and through the smart city process, we're doing it, but it's an ongoing process that will never stop. It starts but never ends. You need energetic awareness, because people need to know what going to the gym on the other side of town instead of the one under your place, what it means. I mean, it means you're using the energy, okay, and simple, and of course in bigger things like public transport. Simplify. Okay, simplify. I don't want to have, you are young, but I'm older. I have a piece of paper with the 100 different passwords I have for the different sites, which I don't remember because I won't remember them. So, I mean, my life needs to be made simpler. I cannot be forced to have more memory in order to remember the things that were supposed to simplify the way in which I use my memory. So this is something that we must remember. Last summer, the municipality made a big communication campaign saying that now you can get your own certificates directly online. Okay, so you need a birth certificate, you need so I had an emergency. One of my kids was going abroad. I needed the certificate. Okay, great. I mean, I work in a municipality, so I went online and I did everything. And after my 15 minutes of fighting with what the data they were requiring, okay, your application has been successful. Now you need to go to an office to get the paper because they have to see you in the face. I said, no, wait a minute. This is online. I mean, it's not a true simplification, okay? But my colleagues, when I asked them, they say, well, yes, because there is a law that says that, you know, in certain cases, they say, but I don't care. I could buy a nuclear bomb on the internet if I want to. I mean, with a credit card. So you have to find a way out of this. You need to understand the simplification really means that. Information must be easy and for everyone, okay? Grandma must be able, with her clumsy fingers, to be able to touch or find or whatever it is. I mean, the information must be real. If I'm blind, I must be able to know that the bus is coming or not coming. There must be an acoustic information or whatever. I mean, it's not up to me to propose, but if you really keep in mind that the information must be easy and really for all, you change the way in which you study things, in which you apply, in which you implement, in which you buy things. Projects need to be challenging. They need to be new and excellent, and they also need to be transferable, because this means that the companies will sell their products, okay? And we are happy if the companies sell their products, because it means that they create business, that they create jobs for you, and that you don't need to go live elsewhere, and you can stay in this beautiful city. The port is part of the city. It's the biggest job giver in the city, the biggest employer. And you need to remember, and not as we did until a few years ago, almost even now, the port is there, Genoa's there, but we are together. I mean, you must remember that. And if you don't have a port, whatever you have around, you need to remember the context in which you're moving when you plan a smart city. You have to move and be free to move, but only when you choose. So not because you're forced to move in order to get things that you could get at home. So you have to have good transportation, electric mobility, or other simpler ways. For example, we have an vertical connection, but it needs to be
Hello, we continue with our next speaker, Nikos Manos.
But it has to be when I
good evening, everybody.
So it is important to keep this in mind.
My name is Nikos Manos, and I'm working at the Credit Center of Emboiki Bank. The Credit Center supports all the operations of the bank, since every operation is centralized, except from the personal contact with the client. That means that approvals, administration, contracts, collaterals, systemic support of loans, legal and technical operations, everything is centralized.
For example, now we just remade Via Garibaldi,
and everything is realized within the credit center.
Old street.
In the branches, there is only the personal contact with the client. Today, we are going to analyze the different types of ship financing.
With the wheelchairs to move.
The presentation, Thanos?
The superintendenza, that's the office in charge of checking that ancient buildings are well kept, but also the handicap that needs to move. So respecting also means connecting them together. And then as the last thing, I will say that for me, it's
thank you very much.
Women, because women
My pleasure.
are capable of multitasking, whereas men concentrate on only one goal, and that doesn't make the city smart. Thank you.
Sure. Just more. You ready?
Thank you. The differences of ship financing from other financing have mainly to do with the specific characteristics of shipping. The main characteristics are the capital-intensive character of the shipping sector, the difference in the time horizons of lenders who are interested for short-term or medium-term loans, and borrowers who are interested in all cases for long-term loans, and also the strong fluctuations of shipping markets that require flexible relations between lenders and borrowers. In ship financing, as in other cases of financing, we can distinguish two broad alternatives that management has in order to finance an investment decision. The first alternative is the internal financing, the self-sustained financing, and the second alternative is the external financing. When we are talking about the internal financing, we mean that the management is based on robust corporate profitability and assumes that retained earnings, when we are speaking about retained earnings, we mean earnings that are not disposed in the form of dividends, but instead are kept within the company. So, in a case of internal financing, we suppose that retained earnings are sufficient to finance investment decisions. In this case, the management decides to sacrifice his profits and reinvest them, finance new projects. The other alternative is external financing. External financing exists when a company chooses to turn to banks or to capital markets in order to raise the required investment funds.
60s, 70s, early 80s. What are the difficulties there? So the first difficulty concerns the financial aspect. As I told you, the advantages of turning your house, for example, if you in your own home change all the windows and put...
so as you can see also in our presentation, we have the capital-intensive character of the shipping sector, the difference in the time horizons and the strong fluctuation that form the specificity of ship financing.
So it is a very difficult business model for the municipality.
And the alternative of ship financing are, as you can see, the corporate profitability, which leads to internal financing, and the banks, financial institutions, and capital markets that lead to the external financing.
For example, scaffoldings. Okay, when you need to
when we are talking about external financing, we have two main categories. One category is the bank lending,
for example, in our two cities, they will cost
and the other category is the capital markets.
Putting them into place, it's
for the capital markets in general, as primary markets, act as intermediaries to provide shipping companies with the funds required to finance new investment projects and sustain organic growth. But capital markets also act as secondary markets. As secondary markets, capital markets provide an efficient mechanism for trading outstanding securities, allowing free trade to take place and liquidity to flow into investments. So through capital markets, somebody can help a company, a shipping company, to get liquidity and to follow and to follow on with an investment project, but it's not like the banks, like in the case of banks, because in capital markets, somebody who has invested the capital for some investment project, he can also, if he wants so, leave this investment and sell it to somebody else. So this is another characteristic of the capital markets that does not that is not valid in case of bank lending. But we will go step by step by analyzing every single different way of financing, and we begin with the bank lending.
The financial institutions which are absent from the smart city process.
As we already said, bank lending is one category of external financing.
It help get the savings for the one who makes the investment.
Sorry.
So it is all to be discovered.
Could the ESCOs play a significant role in future?
And it has three main categories of loans.
No,
the first category of bank lending
the model, it's very banal, it's simple. I mean,
are the plain vanilla loans. When we are saying plain vanilla, we mean that the shipping company chooses to get a loan from a bank, which is the simplest form of financing for a shipping company. Plain vanilla loans can be distinguished according to their duration to working capital finance. And when we are talking about working capital, we mean that these are loans for a duration of about up to 1 year. And they are loans mainly in USD or Euro currency. And working capital is allocated to ship repair and maintenance work. For example, special survey, or dry docking works, or installation of special machinery, or custom conversions to the ships. But apart from that, apart from ship repair and maintenance work, working capital can also cover seasonal needs in cash, seasonality of operations. This is mainly for coastal shipping companies, which are directly involved in home and international tourism during the summer periods. I'm sorry, do you have any questions up to now, or can I proceed? Okay.
No questions.
Thank you. On the other hand, we have, we keep on speaking about the plain vanilla loans. Apart from the working capital, which is the short-term loans, we have the long-term loans that are dedicated for shipbuilding or ship purchase finance. New shipbuildings, as far as it concerns loans for new shipbuildings, the duration exceeds the 7 years. And furthermore, we have also the purchasing of second-hand ships, the duration of which exceeds in most cases the 3 years, depending on various parameters, such as the ship's age, commercial value, condition, the condition of the ship, the costs of reconstruction, the repair and maintenance works, and of course, above all, the time charter rate. Another category, as you can see, the second category of bank lending is the syndicated loans. The volatility in the shipping markets have led the banks to pursue the sharing of the credit risk through the sharing of lending obligations in shipping loans with other banks, thus forming the syndicated loan schemes. More specifically, within a group of banks, each separate bank commits to provide part of a loan. One bank, which is called agent or leader, administers the credit facility on behalf of the syndicate, on behalf of all the other banks. dealing with the fixing of interest rates, receiving repayments and accounting the other syndicate members. So the leader bank has the leading of the whole loan. In most cases, the leader bank is the bank with the biggest stake in the loan, and the revenues from the interest or the collaterals that will be given in case of default of the shipping company are usually estimated on a pro rata basis. The allocation is done on a pro rata basis. That means that if somebody has put in the syndicated loan the 20% and the shipping company defaults, he will get the 20% of the collaterals. If the collaterals is the ship, he will get the 20% of the ship. If the collaterals are maybe cash collaterals, he will get the 20% of the cash collaterals. This is the second category. This is a very famous category of loans for bank lending because the credit risk is dispersed in different banks, and the banks prefer this way of financing a shipping company because of the special characteristics that we already mentioned in the beginning of our presentation. Finally, as a different form of lending from a bank is leasing. Leasing is an alternative method in shipping finance that has some similarity to bank lending. Historically, leasing has been popular and developed in shipping finance since the 60s and 70s, initially in the US, and after that in the UK and in the rest of Europe. This means that it was the predecessor of syndicated loans. More specifically, in a financial leasing, the provider of capital, which is called the lessor, purchases the asset to be leased back to the entrepreneur, the lessee. The entrepreneur is a shipping company who operates the ship. Since the lessor is the owner of the asset, leasing requires less collateral compared to a bank loan. Furthermore, there are important tax allowances, which is a very strong argument for a shipping company to choose leasing for financing its investment projects. Through leasing, the asset does not appear in the balance sheet of the ship owner, thus ameliorating indirectly the rate of the return on equity indicator. This is very simple to understand because the return is increasing due to the operation of the new ship, for example, but the equity is remaining at the same level since the company has not bought a new ship, but is leasing it, is borrowing the ship. So the return on equity indicator is increased. So leasing is good to ameliorate the credit indicators of a company. Leasing is good especially for public listed companies that have to give a good picture to the investors. Finally, the duration of the leasing scheme is around 10 to 15 years, since the lessor who is the provider of capital, the lessor wants and aims at depreciating the total assets value. So he uses 15 years, and by leasing the ship to the shipping company, he aims at minimizing the whole investment he has done. Or in other words, he aims at depreciating the total assets value. We have two types of leasing. We have the financial leasing, where the lessee, I repeat that the lessee is the entrepreneur, the shipping company, purchases the asset at the end of the agreement at the nominal price fully depreciated. This means that the shipping company has the right to purchase the ship at the end of the investment duration, after 10 or 15 years, as we said previously, undertaking by that way the residual value risk. That means that the residual value risk is a risk that comes from the fact that there are fluctuations in the prices of ships in the ship market, and if at the time that the lessee wants to buy at the residual value the ship that he was leasing all this time, if the prices in the market have been increased, then it's okay for the company, for the shipping company, he has gained the difference. But if the prices at that time in the market have been decreased, then the lessee will lose indirectly an amount of money, because he could have bought the ship with a decreased value from the market, but he is obliged from his contract to buy the ship at the residual value that he had agreed with the leasing company before 10 or 15 years at the beginning of the contract. The sale and lease back transaction, which is a transaction that where the management of the shipping company sells a ship that the shipping company has bought, sell the ship to the bank in order to get liquidity, and then the bank leases it back to the shipping company. This is the sale and lease back policy. The sale and lease back transaction is a category of financial leasing, where the shipping company sells the asset and leases it back. The financial leasing is also known as bareboat charter. When you hear in the market that a company is doing a bareboat charter, this means that we have a financial leasing. On the other hand, we have the operational leasing, which is more flexible, and according to which the lessor is the provider of the capital, the bank in our case, the lessor is required to maintain the equipment. He does not only, the lessor does not only have the obligation to provide the ship to the shipping company, but he also has the obligation to maintain the ship. In this type of lease, the lessee, shipping company, preserves the right to cancel the agreement and return the asset before the stipulated expiry date. So this is more flexible and gives the possibility at the shipping company to manage better the fluctuation in the shipping market. So the lessor undertakes, in this case, the residual value risk, which is different from the financial leasing case, where the lessee was undertaking the residual value risk. These were the three categories of bank lending. Now we are going to analyze the capital markets. Sorry. The capital markets, we repeat that shipping companies can have external financing from other sources other than their internal business, and apart from the banks, we have the capital markets. The capital markets are divided in debt capital markets and equity capital markets. Traditionally, shipping companies have relied on bank debt to finance their operations and the acquisition of vessels. The recent credit crisis and the tightening of credit conditions, particularly in Europe, prompted the shipping companies to seek other forms of funding. One such alternative source of finance that has become available to shipping companies in recent times has been international debt capital markets. Indeed, there is evidence of an increasing number of bond issuances by shipping companies from the end of 2009 through 2013 until today, because shipping companies faced several problems in order to get financing from banks. So the solution was to try to get financing from the international capital markets. So shipping companies have opted for a variety of bond instruments depending on their needs and market conditions. This variety of bond instruments have ranged from relatively straightforward, plain vanilla, simple corporate bonds through more complex instruments such as convertible bonds, structured bonds. Now we are going to analyze category per category. We are going to begin with the corporate bonds, which is the simplest category of bonds, the plain vanilla bonds. And we're going to finish with the securitization, which is the most complex category of debt financing from capital markets. Corporate bonds. The use of bonds by shipping companies to raise finance is certainly not a new development in the shipping industry. Historically, bond issuance by shipping company has been less frequent, and bond issuances typically have involved relatively small tranches, which have been used to supplement much larger bank debt facilities. However, the end of 2009 and the first half of 2010 saw a surge in larger bond issuances by shipping companies, including several repeat issuances. Because of the fact that capital markets gives issuers access to a wider and more diverse pool of international investors, shipping companies have the ability to raise finance at rates that could potentially be cheaper than those offered to them in traditional lending. And even if bond market interest rates prove to be higher than typical commercial bank lending rates, because of market volatility, for instance, corporate bonds carry the additional advantage of being issued with longer durations than bank loans. As we said at the beginning of our presentation, the one main characteristic that characterizes the ship financing is that lenders have a different horizon from borrowers. Lenders want to lend money for a short-term or medium-term period, and borrowers, the shipping companies, want to get money for a longer period. So this problem is, we can say that shipping companies can give a solution in this problem by corporate bonds, which can get longer durations more easily than getting longer duration from a bank. In addition, the package of covenants, the covenants are the strict terms that are in the contracts of a loan, and these terms have to be valid within all the duration of the loan. So if a covenant is not followed by the shipping company, then the bank can ask from the shipping company back all the money it has get. The problem with the covenants, because covenants become a problem when, especially in periods of crisis like the recent crisis that we still face internationally. The problem with the covenants is not the case in corporate bonds, because in capital markets the deal is typically lighter than that would be imposed in case of bank lending. Corporate bonds are the simple form of debt capital markets instrument. A shipping company can either issue the bond directly. This means that the shipping company is the issuer of the bond, and it is the shipping company that has to find the investors that will lend by getting the tranches of the bond and the coupons. Or the shipping company may use an offshore structure whereby the bonds are issued by a special purpose vehicle, an SPV, established in an offshore financial center, with the shipping company as ultimate obligor, guaranteeing the performance of the SPV's payment obligations to the investors. The offshore structure offers also tax advantages. So in many cases, shipping companies choose to make the corporate bond issuance by an SPV, through an SPV. In addition, plain vanilla bonds, the simplest form of bonds, do not require the shipping company to encumber any of its assets, as investors will in most cases not require security. This is not the case in bank lending, where the management is obliged to encumber as collateral its ship. What shipping companies must bear in mind, however, in the context of any bond issuance, is that to the extent that the securities are offered to investors globally and are listed on a recognized stock exchange, the company will invariably need to produce an offering document, which will contain extensive disclosure in relation to the company's business and financial condition. The company will therefore be required to disclose publicly a whole raft of information, which it would not otherwise disclose in a private deal, and would in addition be responsible for the content of the offering document, thus exposing itself to liability for any potentially material misstatements or omissions. When this is a great difference with the traditional bank lending, because in traditional bank lending, shipping companies are not exposed in that way. This means that they do not disclose internal informations and other characteristics that of the shipping company that they are obliged to disclose in case of a corporate bond that is sold in the open market. And this is a disadvantage because it's against the confidentiality of many information that the company can have and wants to keep inside the company.
I think it's better.
All this was about the corporate bonds. Now we have another category of bonds, which is the high yield bonds. The high yield bonds are also called junk bonds. The high yield bond market has attracted the interest of shipping companies a lot. This is done because cyclicality, volatility, and high leverage may jeopardize shipping companies, expected cash flows, and this is known, this is well known by the market, and everybody who is lending a company, a shipping company, through high yield bonds knows that the risk is very high. So these bonds are called high yield bonds. These bonds are a case especially in at the recession periods, because at the recession periods the financing from all sources is very rare. There is a scarcity of liquidity, and everybody knows that by lending a company like the shipping companies, like a shipping company which has great volatility because of the volatility of the market, knows that they get great risk. These conditions can further result to deterioration of corporate credit quality and increase the probability of default. Financial crises and economic shocks exert a critical adverse impact on the shipping markets, as did particularly the Asian financial crisis and the Russian economic upheaval during the 97-98. Deterioration in international terms of trade affects mostly the shipping companies, exposed in high gearing and operating mainly in the spot market, leading to problematic servicing of high debt. In the past, depressed market conditions have hit shipping markets and led to dramatic declines in freight rates and vessel prices in most market segments. As a consequence, several shipping companies proceeded to default on their high yield bond issues, and the investors lost their money. At the beginning, we saw that there were investors that were willing to invest in high yield bond market, in high yield bonds of shipping companies. But now, recent years, after a lot of defaults that they saw previous years, from the 97 till 2005, the high yield bonds have not the demand that they used to have. Apart from the high yield bonds, we have the convertible bonds. This is a special category of bonds. This is an option open to shipping companies to tap the convertible bond market. The increasing willingness of shipping companies to consider alternative forms of debt raising structures has resulted in such companies issuing not only plain vanilla, simple bonds, but also more complex bonds. The convertible bonds, convertible into equity at the option of the investor, is a complex category of bonds. The conversion of the tranches of bonds into equity can be at the option of the investor, at the option of the issuer of the bond, or mandatorily from the basic terms of the contract. Convertible bonds are bonds that give the investor, the one who lends the company, the right to convert the debt it holds. For example, the principal amount it has advanced to the issuer. So, the convertible bonds give the right to the investor to convert the debt into newly issued shares of the issuer, of the shipping company, or of another company within the issuer's group. It is a group of companies. There are variations of the convertibility option, which, as mentioned, can be exercised at the option of the investor. This means that the investor has the option to convert its tranches of bond into shares of equity. It can be done at the option of the issuer, where the issuer's shares are trading within or above a certain pre-agreed threshold, or can be mandatory. The bonds convert into shares mandatorily at maturity from the basic term of the contract, the initial contract. Finally, conversion can be dependent upon the occurrence of certain events,
cargo ships and passenger ships need
which are also inscribed in the initial term of in the initial contract, such as the company in question carrying out an initial public offer. Convertible bonds can be an attractive financing option for shipping companies because offering investors an equity component would normally result in the convertible bonds bearing a lower coupon rate. It would also allow shipping companies to postpone an equity raising until a time where their share price is favorable enough for investors to want to opt into the equity. That means that instead of issuing shares at the time that the probable crisis has led the stock price in levels, in very low levels, the management of the company can use the convertible bonds to get liquidity instead of issuing new shares at a very low price. And then, at the end of the maturity of the bond, when the price and when the market will be normalized and the price of the shares of the shipping company will be at the logical level, the company may convert the tranches of bonds into shares. So it is an indirect way of issuing new shares and getting liquidity from the market. But convertible bonds, except from the attractive character that they have for shipping companies, they have an attractive character for investors because they allow investors to hedge their investment risk, collect coupon, which is the coupon is the interest. When we speak about the coupon for a bond, it's the interest paid in periods of time that are agreed from the beginning from the initial contract. Usually the coupons are paid to investors every 6 months. So the investors hedge their investment risk because they know that at the end of the maturity of the bond, they can convert the bond into shares. So this is the hedging. They collect coupon interest during the life of the bond, so they have an income during the whole maturity of the bond, and the income is stable. It is agreed from the beginning of the loan, and in case of shipping companies, the coupon rate is above 8%, 6%, 8%, which is a very good rate of return. And at the same time, apart from the coupon rate and the hedging of the investment risk, they benefit from a potential capital appreciation because all this time, all the time that they hold the convertible bond till the end of its maturity, and the end of the maturity of the bond can be after 10 or 15 years, they know that at the end of the maturity of the bond, they may gain from the appreciation of the underlying shares of the shipping company. On the other hand, the approval process can be more cumbersome for an issuer, because depending on the structure used and the jurisdiction involved, The issuer may need to obtain, amongst other things, shareholder approval for the issuance of the bonds, shareholder approval for the issuance of the equity upon conversion, which may need to include a waiver of preemption rights, and approval from the securities regulator of the jurisdiction of its incorporation. For instance, in the United Arab Emirates, the securities regulator will need to approve the share capital increase necessary for the issue of new shares, and would need to make all necessary arrangements at the stock exchange where the new shares are to be listed.
On the other hand, having a high
this, in other words, means that when a shipping company chooses convertible bonds as a way of finance an investment project, it may take time. And it may take time, and it's not as simple as to get a loan from a bank or a corporate bond, or issue a corporate bond. But I think that the advantages that are provided by convertible bonds are a good argument for a shipping company to choose convertible bonds as an alternative for financing its investment projects. The most complex way of financing a shipping market, a shipping company, is securitization. The use of securitization structures or of balance sheet structured bonds. Through these structures, banks with substantial shipping portfolios can refinance these assets by transferring the shipping loans and relevant security to an offshore entity, which in turn will fund its acquisition of the relevant portfolio through the issue of secured bonds. This means that if the bank has given a lot of loans to shipping companies in the market and has not any liquidity in order to continue to finance projects for shipping market, the bank chooses to sell all the portfolio of shipping loans to the market in order to get liquidity and continue to provide loans in the market. The bank continues, in this case, to service the assets on behalf of the issuer of the bonds, on behalf of the shipping companies, and as a result, they are able to maintain their relationships with their clients within an agreed servicing framework. Shipping companies can use securitization or off-balance sheet, as it is called, or balance sheet structured bonds to finance or refinance vessels. Title to the vessels is transferred to special purpose vehicles, SPVs, which will fund these acquisitions through the issue of secured bonds. Similarly to a shipping bank loan, the bonds are secured over the vessels. Earnings accounts, insurance policies, and if there is a charter agreement, time charters. Because of their off-balance sheet nature, the vessels and other assets granted as security are ring-fenced from the potential insolvency of the shipping company. So the risk is not so big as in high-yield bonds or corporate bonds, where, as we told earlier, there is no the issuer, the shipping company, is not obliged to provide its ship as a collateral. In securitization, all loans are securitized, that's why we use this term, by the assets the ships.
Abbiamo
in our case.
acquistato
Securitization is extremely flexible,
megawattora
as it can be adjusted to the needs of the relevant originating bank or shipping company, and to the requirements or expectations of any class of investors which is being targeted. These bonds can be listed or privately placed. When we are telling that these bonds can be listed, this means that they can be exchanged in the market. And when we are telling that they're privately placed, this means that they are sold within funds and investors and big investors like mainly funds. They can be structured through a number of credit enhancement features, so that the rating of credit of the bonds exceeds that of the originating bank or shipping company, enabling, for example, a non-investment grade company to have access to investment grade funding. In other words, the selection of bonds that are securitized and bring money to the bank in order to finance new projects, the structure of the different bonds that are sold in the market can increase the rating of the shipping company, and the case that the shipping company could not get easily financing from the market due to its bad investment grade, now with the securitization and the increased rate that could be given because of the dispersion of the risk through the sale of more bonds than one bond, the shipping company could have access to finance. In an environment where bank debt will become more and more expensive, as we see in our everyday transactions, and difficult to obtain, securitization, or in other words, structured bonds, is an effective funding alternative to senior secured bank debt for shipping companies. This is why from 2009 till 2013 till today, the securitization is very popular within banks. Through securitization, banks can give life to covered bonds, which may be either regulated or structured covered bonds. Covered bonds have become increasingly popular during the recent credit crisis due to the fact that the securities are backed by a pool of assets, essentially a form of security, such as mortgages or other retail or commercial loans. Such assets are ring-fenced for investors, even in bankruptcy of the issuer of the securities, even if the issuer defaults. In other words, if the issuer defaults, the investors would have recourse not only to the issuer, obligor, but would also have access to the underlying assets in priority to other creditors, and would be able to liquidate such assets and apply the proceeds of sale towards repayment of the principal and the interest due to them. This means that they are, when somebody gets a bond through securitization, in a case of default of the shipping company, he has the first priority among all the debt holders, debt bond holders. So he will get, he's the first that he will get the principal that he has lent to the shipping company and the interest, and after when he's satisfied with that, the liquidation of the company will proceed by repaying the rest of bondholders, corporate bonds, high yield bonds, and convertible bonds. The high yield bonds is the latest category of bonds that will be repaid, and that's why in the majority of cases, high-yield bond holder or junk bond holder never gets his money back. Covered bonds can therefore benefit from a higher credit rating. That's why that as a credit rating, in many cases, they are above A. And on the other hand, high-yield bonds have no credit rating.
And so there it was.
So covered bonds can benefit from a higher credit rating, which could potentially be higher than the issuer's own credit rating, and thus give the issuer access to a wider category of investors. For these reasons, covered bonds offer the issuer the ability to agree coupon that would be more favorable, a coupon that is lower compared to what it would need to pay investors on a plain vanilla unsecured deal. Of course, when the coupon is lower, it is an advantage that leads the management of shipping companies to prefer covered bonds from lending from a financing from a bank, because especially in the case of when the shipping market is in crisis, like is the fact in nowadays, banks lend to shipping companies with a rate that is above their means. So shipping companies can make better deals within the market by getting better interest rates than within the banks. Shipping loans could thus have a significant role to play in the development of the covered bond market in any event. However, we must not forget that securitization is very dangerous, since securitization was the main cause of the recent global financial crisis due to the swelling of the debt for banks or even countries. The example that shows the great risk of securitization is the securitization that was due to which the crisis began globally from the US. There we had the securitization of mortgages, which led to a continuous increase of lending to individuals without the existence of the money. And due to the leverage, 2007, the crisis began and was burst out all over the world. But securitization also led banks in Europe to collide, and also now we see that securitization leads also countries to default. Examples where securitization was used and augmented, increased the debt of countries and banks in levels, in very high levels, above GDP, is Luxembourg, Malta, Cyprus, that recently almost defaulted, Iceland, that has already defaulted some years ago. This is examples that show us that securitization may have a lot of advantages, but it's also very dangerous. So, from all kind of bonds, our conclusion is that the most simple bonds or the most simple loans are the better ones with the less risk.
One of the characteristics of the Port of Savona is that it has
But
systematically
also securitization, if is used with
because this kind of
a savvy way, can give can have good results for a shipping company.
On a handicraft, not on an industrial level. Many countries have produced small generators.
Apart from the debt capital markets that are part of external financing, shipping companies, when speaking about external financing, have also the possibility to get financing from the equity capital markets.
One of the horizontal axis, which is the one that is with 2 or 3.
As far as it concerns the equity capital markets, we have two categories. The first category is the issue.
The future technology to be developed.
Is the IPOs and follow-on offers.
Is that they are small and limited in the results, and the wind is not.
We will say some things in general for the equity capital markets, and we'll proceed to analyze the IPOs and follow-on offers and the private placement. As the business environment changes dynamically in the shipping industry, shipping companies turn to new financial instruments and markets to finance their investment plans. A gradual shift is apparent in shipping finance more recently, induced by economic recessions and shipping crises. This shift has been reinforced by the interactive impact of a number of factors, including erosion of the capital reserves in many shipping companies, substantial contraction of banking finance, increasing attention on capital adequacy as a critical issue for all parties concerned, shipping companies, banks, investors. Substantial capital requirements to replace the aging wet and dry fleets worldwide. Internationalization and integration of world capital markets, structural and cultural reorganization of shipping companies induced by capital markets requirements and investor expectations.
This means
promotion, corporate governance, social responsibility, and business ethics concepts. All this have led shipping companies to choose also equity capital markets for their financing of investment projects. The initial public offering, or IPO, is the first sale of stock by a private company that wants to turn into public. IPOs are often issued by smaller, younger companies seeking capital to expand, but can also be done by large privately owned companies looking to become publicly traded. In an IPO, the issuer, the company, in our case the shipping company, obtains the assistance of an underwriting firm, which helps it determine what type of security to issue, common or preferred. The best offering price and the time to bring it to the market. The common stock is the stock that is mainly marketed in the stock market, and the preferred has some special characteristics that are more favorable to their owners. Further to the IPO, a company may choose to dispose further stake of the company to the market, and this is called the follow-on offer. That means that the company begins with an initial public offering in order to get some liquidity, and according to the valuation that is done, the issuance of the shares, the shares are sold to the market in a specific price, and after that the company aims at proving to the market that its management and its prospects are very flourish and competitive. And after a specific time, a period of time, they can go with a follow-on offer in order to get more liquidity from the market, but in a price much higher than that used in the first issuance of stocks. But unfortunately, there are cases where the company does not have this possibility with a follow-on offer, because from the time that the initial public offering was done, the management didn't prove any specific competencies and amelioration of the business, and didn't have the possibility to follow an offer with a higher price of the stock.
Which is
In an IPO, the issuer obtains the assistance of an underwriting firm, because it cannot go, a shipping company cannot issue shares and sell them all alone in the market. An underwriting firm is indispensable for such financing strategy. The underwriting firm will help it determine what type of security to issue, the best offering time, the best offering price, and the time to bring it to market. The underwriting firm is the one who is doing the valuation of the company. Further to the IPO, more specifically, IPO can be a risky investment for investors. For the individual investor, it is tough to predict what the stock will do on its initial day of trading, because everything is judged upon the valuation that the underwriting firm has done. So there is the great risk for the individual investor during the first day, the initial day of trading, for the stock to decrease in value. And this risk remains the same for the near future, because there is often little historical data for how the management of the specific shipping company acts in its everyday operation. Also, most IPOs are of companies going through a transitory growth period, which are subject to additional uncertainty regarding their future values. And we must not forget that those who
other savings and energy are, for example,
choose the strategy of initial public offering in order to get financing for their investment projects are, in most cases, those who have liquidity problems. Because if they didn't have liquidity problems, they would keep their company. They wouldn't sell it in the open market. Shipping companies' public offerings are addressed to and powered by institutional investors, as shipping is too small to attract the public. So the underwriting firm searches for the institutional investors, which are the big investors, in order to collect money and give them the shares, the shares of the company. After a public offering occurs, there is a differentiation in management practices that is forced by the demands of every category of investors. In case of IPOs or follow-on offers, we have three categories of investors. We have the retail investors, which are the everyday investors like you and me. We have the private investors, which are the investors that have big tranches of money, and we have the institutional investors. There we speak about funds and millions of dollars. The IPO is forced by the demands of each category of investors, which is summarized in increased control in all management aspects. This is the great difference of an IPO and plain vanilla bank lending. In the case of the IPO, there is great control, increased control from all investors, because everybody wants to know clearly to who he has given the money, to who manages his money. Because we could say that by lending somebody, by financing an investment project, that means that I give somebody my money to manage my money, and I need to control him in order to increase, to secure the return on equity, on the money that I have put in his business. As you can see in our presentation, there are advantages and disadvantages for IPOs. The advantages are the following. Firstly, you have the exit strategy, liquidity for minority owners. That means that somebody can put his money in an investment project, and if in a period of time he select to leave this investment project, he can very easily sell his stocks to somebody else and leave from the project. This is not the case in bonds, where the dilution in the market is very small, and it's not easy to sell your tranches to somebody else and leave and exit from the project. Another advantage is the valuation. The valuation is in all cases higher. The valuation is above net asset and book value, because the fact that there is a demand for shares in the market and a specific and the number of shares is specific, that leads to higher valuation. This is an advantage for all investors, and also it is an advantage for the owner of the shipping company.
Last but not least, always in Baba Ligure,
furthermore, through the IPOs, the shipping company has access to capital markets very easily in order to grow its fleet, in general.
1.5 megawatts.
Apart from that, there is also the cost of capital, which is reduced due to liquidity of company stock.
With 1,500 people, and it is the first step towards a sustainable.
The shipping company sells a part of the company, and is not obliged to give to somebody interest for the money it got. Because in case of bank lending, the company gets the money, makes the investment, but there is also every period of 3 or 6 months the obligation from the company to pay the interest. In the case of the IPO, there is no obligation to pay any interest. The company sells the part of the company to some investors, and after that gets the money and continue to follow the organic growth. And finally, a big advantage is the ability to make acquisitions using company stocks. But there are also the disadvantages, and the most important disadvantage, as we said earlier, is the less confidentiality. The company that proceeds with an IPO or a follow-on offer is obliged to give complete financial and to disclose all financial and related data of the company to the open market. Everybody has access to every information that he wants in order to invest his money in the company. Apart from that, it is time consuming. This means that in order for a shipping company to get money through an IPO, it may have to wait even a year, more than a year, in order to begin to prepare the data that will be given to investors, to find investors, to find the company that the banking company that will do the IPO. All this take time. And if the shipping company does not need the money,
acknowledgement and praise, for example,
it's okay. But if the shipping company needs the money right now, it is not an alternative that we would suggest. Apart from that, the high costs, the regulatory, auditing, legal, and investor relations requirements for IPOs means that they have high costs for the company.
Very important when you
there is continuous scrutiny
by the lobster that you saw in the picture.
Every trimester that the company has to reveal its profits in the open market. They have to
significant.
They give up the confidentiality that they have. They have to give clearly all the data to the investors, and this is done every single trimester or semester. The investor's interest is not steady. That means that they may begin with a share price at the level of at a specific level, and if they do not keep alive the investor's interest, the stock price may decrease levels that are not
the amount of time needed
that are not good for the company. And finally, it's not easy for the shipping management to change its strategy. It's not flexible. If the company, if the management has only get some financing from a bank, in that case, it is easy to change strategy and to get to other sectors in the market. But in case of the IPO, everything must be agreed with the investors. And if the investors do not agree with a change, even a little change in the strategy of the company, this is immediately reflected to the price of the stock. We have seen stocks that decrease even by 50% and 60% in one day because of the reveal of some data or some change of strategy, and in one day we see a decrease of stock that could reach even the 50-60%. Apart from the IPO, the issuance of shares, the equity capital markets have also the private placement alternative. The policy of financing through private placement concerns the sale of securities, issuing shares to a relatively small number of selected investors. The initial public offering concerns the issuance of shares that are sold to the open market. The private placement concerns the issuance of shares that are sold to a relatively small number of selected investors. Investors involved in private placements are usually large banks, mutual funds, insurance companies, pension funds, investment funds, They are big investors. They are not retail investors. Private placement is the opposite of a public issue in that term. The fact that a private placement is offered to a few selected individuals means that the placement does not have to be registered at the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is good because it diminishes the time that is needed in order to get the financing. In many cases, detailed financial information is not disclosed, and the need for a prospectus is waived. This is also good, because as we told earlier, in the initial public offering, all companies, in our case shipping companies, are obliged to have a prospectus with all the data of the company, disclosing all, even confidential data. In case of private placement, maybe they can deal with the investors and not disclose the information within a prospectus and waive the need for a prospectus. Those two facts, the fact that there is a waiver of prospectus and the fact that the placement is done to a few individuals, render the whole process of liquidity raising through private placement a quicker procedure than an IPO. Finally, since the placements are private rather than public, the average investor is only made aware of the placement after it has occurred. That means that the issued shares are sold to funds, and after that, the company tells that to the open market, and the dilution from the increased shares in the market exists, and the funds begin to sell, if they want, the shares they got from the private placement to the open market. So the negative thing for investors, which is the dilution of shares, exists, but they cannot do something to hedge it, because in the IPO and the follow-on offer, investors can get more stocks from the dilution and smooth a little bit the negative impact from the dilution of shares. In the case of private placement, they cannot do the same thing. They cannot smooth the negative effect of dilution, because it is the funds that have the control of that. It is the funds that have the control of selling shares and having the control of the new tranche of shares that is in the open market. A great issue for private placements is, where do we find private equity? Historically, we can find within friends and family and retained earnings. That means that shipping companies that usually they are family owned, they can get into communication with other shipping companies and sell some percentage of their company in order to get issue shares, sell the shares to some other shipping company in order to get financing. Apart from that, another source of private equity can be high net worth individuals that can be found in private banking of the different banks. And finally, the institutional investors, who are the investors that can invest their money in every case, from the cases that we analyzed from the beginning of our presentation. Institutional investors can be listed or private equity funds
you have more cost to
So
maintain that facility.
a problem for the private placement is to find from where we are going to get the financing.
Okay.
Why does private equity wish to invest in a ship owner's business? The main argument for an institutional investor or some investor to invest in a ship owner's business is return on equity. The private equity investors seek to obtain a return on the funds they invest of more than 15% per annum. This is, in most cases, achieved by the issuance of preferred stocks, because shipping companies do not want to give 15% to every investor that has a stock. So, in private placements, in most cases, we have the issuance of preferred stocks. Apart from the return on equity, which is very high, comparing to other returns within the market, an important argument for somebody to invest through private placement is diversification. The private equity funds need to diversify their investment portfolio. So in case of private placement, it is an opportunity for those companies, for those funds, to diversify their portfolio and decrease their risk, their credit risk. Below, we present the advantages and disadvantages of private placement. So, we begin with the advantages. The first one is that private equity funding provides the ease of partnering with people who know well the shipping industry, not bankers or retail investors. That's what we were telling before, that a source of private equity fund may be family, friends, private banking investors, people who, in most cases, know the shipping industry, and that's why they select, they choose to get in that company, in a company that is proceeding with the private placement. Another advantage is that the regulatory framework is less strict than in the case of an IPO, since certain criteria are overridden. That means that the regulatory framework considers that those who enter in a private placement know very well in the industry. So there is no need for several strict terms to be followed in order to give access to the shipping company in the capital markets.
What's your feeling?
Apart from that, sensitive information concerning the company are not spread out all over the market.
LNG could be a choice for the...
Because this is the waiving of prospectus. But even if the company is obliged to have a prospectus with a disclosure of data, even in that case, since the investors are a little are fewer than the open market, this means that the disclosure of information is not spread out all over the market. It is only between some big investors, and this is very good for the management of the shipping company. Apart from that, finally, the final advantage that we have found is that the brokerage commission and underwriting fees for the registering and selling of the stock are considerably less than the fees that are valid in the case of an IPO. However, like in all cases, there are disadvantages. The most important disadvantage is that it is more difficult to obtain high amounts of money privately as it is publicly. Of course, if a company tries to get money from specific people or investors or funds, it is more difficult than to get out in the open market and issue shares and sell its shares. But we said that there are plenty of advantages in the case of private placement. Another disadvantage is that large investors may achieve a voting control and jeopardize the initial majority that manages the company. This is an important disadvantage because the ship owner risks to lose the control of his own company because the shares that are sold are not spread out among investors in the open market who will have minority rights in the company. Issued shares are given to specific investors and to funds, and the risk of losing the control of the company increases. And finally, investors cannot easily resell their securities since the stocks are concentrated in very few hands. There is not the dilution that exists in the case of IPOs. After having analyzed all different ways of financing, our opinion is that the most effective, sustained, and less risky alternative is the organic growth through the disposal of corporate earnings, because in that case the company ameliorates and grows with its own power and is not and has nothing to do with banks and investors that increase the risk of control and default. Thank you very much for your time. I'm at your disposal for any questions.
After you, of course, you have some emissions. So if you also have some measures that compensate that emissions that you produce.
I'm sorry, you are talking about the measure to compensate the CO2 emission produced by the ship tanks. By whom?
It's not a preventive measures.
Στην εμπορική. Τώρα, ναι, είχε πολλές.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. Nikos Manos finished his lecture now. We don't have any other lectures today. We will continue tomorrow, on Monday, I mean. Have a nice weekend. Thank you again. For any questions, you can send us an email and we will answer as soon as possible.
Could you make the question
Thank you. Bye.
Because we are not understanding it.
Perdona, sí. O sea, lo que quiero preguntar es si tenéis medidas compensatorias a los efectos que se producen con las emisiones de CO2, es decir, con la actividad portuaria, esas emisiones, si luego tenéis algunas medidas, por ejemplo, en el tema de biodiversidad o o sea, bueno, principalmente, por ejemplo, en temas de plantas o temas de animales, o sea, si realmente hacéis alguna medida para corregir esos efectos negativos que estáis teniendo en el medio ambiente.
Allora, dal punto di vista di compensazioni, l'unica cosa che noi cerchiamo di fare è quella di diminuirle. Compensarle è un discorso che può essere, diciamo, relativamente efficace, nel senso che certamente dal punto di vista di effetto della presenza di CO2, il fatto di compensarle facendo delle zone magari di piantagioni di alberi o di quant'altro, a parte che la Liguria è una delle terre più boscose che ci sono in Italia, ma questo ce l'abbiamo già, ecco, esiste già. Il discorso è, ritengo, correre in questo modo uno non risolve il problema, cioè quello della produzione di CO2, ma ne crea, diciamo, fa in maniera che una quota parte possa essere in qualche modo recuperata. C'è qualcuno che voleva anche fare un sistema, soprattutto per le centrali termiche, di mettere la CO2 sottoterra. Non sono queste le soluzioni sono quelle di fare in maniera che si diminuisca la produzione, e penso che la strada più percorribile sia quella di razionalizzare i consumi o di renderli compatibili attraverso dei sistemi di storage. Questo potrebbe essere storage dell'energia, ovviamente. Questo potrebbe essere una soluzione.
No, from the point of view of compensation, the real compensation is trying to diminish the emissions of CO2, because compensation would be relatively efficient, as you would keep on having the presence of CO2. So planting trees, for example, is not a real measure in the Liguria, the region of Liguria, which one of the most highly wooded regions of Italy. He thinks that it is not a street that you need to choose, because you do not really solve the problem, which is solved only in diminishing the production of CO2. Someone had proposed making a system for thermal centers capturing CO2 underground, but the real solution is lowering the production, and the best way is rationalizing the use and making it compatible through energy storage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mille. Io adesso alla produttrice.